G'day everyone, Artist Wayne here with another motorcycle adventure. Recently I joined 7 other fellow riders up at Mount Victoria, New South Wales on a Friday night, ready for a big ride the following day. But before we could go out to the local pub for dinner, we had to wait for Alan to change his tyre. He didn't want to wear his new tyre out on the way up, so he chose to replace the old with the new in our cabin. The following morning we were still waiting for Alan to get the tyre to bead to the rim. Once he was done, we were off like a dog shut up Main Street. I was about to start a fantastic day's riding with a great bunch of blokes. Mark, Alan, Doug, John, Ian, Colin and Michael. And after a little stint on the tar, it didn't take us long to get where we were happiest. On the dirt. Now the weekend weather forecast was for rain and lots of it, but as you can see, the weather was perfect for riding. And our accommodation last night, which had been organised by Alan, was at the Cedar Lodge Cabins, and from there it was a short walk and a long wait over to the Imperial Hotel for dinner. The trails we were riding were awesome, and as the day went by, they got even better. Mark was out in front on his BMW. Also riding BMWs was Doug and Colin. Riding their KTMs was Alan, Ian, John and Michael. And let's not forget yours truly, I was riding the mighty DR650. And I have to say I'm really enjoying the bike more and more. Now, I learn a lot when watching riders like these guys. Guys that have been riding all their lives. Now I did say the weather was perfect, but it was plain to see there had been a lot of rain, because the further we went, the wetter and slipperier it got. Our destination for the end of the day was Blayney. It's a farming town in the central west region of New South Wales, about 240 kilometres west of Sydney, and our stop for lunch was going to be at the town of Oberon. But the day's ride was not without problems. Doug was having issues with his BMW. He was not a happy chappy. Anyway, whilst he and his brother John were trying to solve the problem, and knowing that Alan and Colin would soon catch up to them, I thought I'd ride on ahead and see where the other boys were and let them know what was happening. And that's when I came up to a convoy of 4-wheel drives blocking the trail ahead. One of the boys had told me there was a rider ahead who had stacked his bike, so I rode on up to lend a hand. And there was Ian's big KTM laying on the ground, and Ian was letting a little bit of air out of his rear tyre. And you can see by the way I'm walking and clinging to the sides that it was a little on the steep side. This was a hill full of red, slippery, greasy clay. In fact, you'll just see how slippery it is when we got Ian's bike upright and he tried to take off. He started to slide down the hill in the wrong direction, yelling, "Stop me, stop me, stop me!" Anyway, eventually he got up the hill. Meanwhile, Michael had ridden down from ahead of us to see what was going on, so I told him to ride down the hill and come back up just for the video. I actually thought he'd tell me to bugger off, but he said, "Okay, here's how the experts do it." Next up the hill was John on his big KTM. It's great to see the different styles of the riders. John can be seen here using the zigzag method, and he was laughing all the way. Brother Doug just kicks out a leg to keep his balance. Next up was Colin on his F800 BMW. But I think he was a bit distracted by me standing there on the side of the trail with a video camera. So I did what any mate would do. I moved in closer. And the last man left was Alan on his big KTM. Because he'd lost momentum behind Colin, he was doing what Ian did earlier, sliding back down the hill. But up he came and we all regrouped at the top for a good laugh before heading off once again. We were now riding through some very pretty forestry roads, and sometimes it appeared we weren't even riding on a trail. All day we'd been using the cornerman system so that nobody got lost. Most of us were carrying a map of the ride, but you had to be careful when you checked it. Like John found out, take your eyes off the trail for a second and you ended up horizontal. We'd ride out of the bush into big open paddocks and see huge mobs of kangaroos. This section of the ride was absolutely awesome, riding through some burned out bush that wound its way through all the beautiful gum trees, and it came with its own complimentary slippery mud. And after that it didn't take us long to hit the town of Oberon, where we fueled the bikes, had some lunch before setting off once again. But we didn't get far before our lead man Mark had an off on his bike and twisted his ankle. He did, however, walk it off and carry on. But after he dropped the bike a second time, he had to call it quits. So he rode back to Blayney via the road. We were now down to 7 riders and the terrain got even slipperier and was covered in all kinds of obstacles, including trees that needed to be cut out of the way. Who carries an axe, you ask? Well, Alan does. It was like watching the log chopping championships at the Easter show. Alan was chopping, Ian was clearing branches, and the rest of us, well, we were just watching. When the trail goes red, you can bet it's slippery, and that's exactly what Alan found out. He was now our lead rider, and when we came around the bend in a trail, there was the big KTM on the ground. It's definitely not something I'm used to seeing. And I know I keep repeating myself, but it just seemed the longer we rode, the slipperier the terrain became. And what's this? Al's KTM on the ground again? Maybe he was tired from all the wood chopping he'd done, so there was no point in asking him to cut full trees out of the way. We just had to ride around them. Anyway, after an awesome day on the trails, we eventually made our way closer to the town of Blayney. It had been a magnificent day's riding. And when we did eventually arrive at Blayney, just after dark, we got to catch up with Mark, who was laying on his bed with one ankle twice the size of the other. The boys got him some takeaway Chinese, and after we had a great dinner at the pub, we all sat in his room having a drink and a great laugh about the day. Adventure riding, it's the best way to travel. A weekend away with a fantastic bunch of blokes and a perfect ride. I can't wait to do it all again. I'm artist Wayne Dowson, and thanks for watching, everyone.